Hello, everybody. Good morning to you, or good afternoon, wherever you are at, or good evening. Today's game is between Anton Korobov with the white pieces and Nikita Vitiugov with the black pieces. This game took place in St. Petersburg in 2013, and the theme of this game is we're going to talk about the pawn structure versus the two bishops. So let's get right into it. So Korobov with the white pieces started out with d4, knight f6 with Vitiugov, c4, e6, knight f3, Nimzo Indian. Actually, scratch that. It's sort of not a Nimzo Indian, but it transposes into Nimzo Indian. This would be a Bogo Indian. But anyway, semantics. Now we transpose into a Nimzo Indian proper. Rubinstein variation with b6, e3, bishop b7. This is all well-known theory. And here, in classical Nimzo Indian fashion, black parts with this dark square bishop, gives up the bishop pair, and now white has the two bishops, but in exchange, he has a double pawn situation on the c file. And here we are, right here, e4. Okay, so this is a age-old typical situation that occurs in Nimzo Indian. Okay, so black wants to establish the blockade, right, of the pawns and exploit white's double pawns. So basically, black wants to keep the position closed, right, which would be more conducive to the operation of the two knights. White on the other hand wants to break the position open, right, which would be more conducive to the bishop pair, and usually he'll do that by playing moves like f4, right, gain space, opens up the position and gains space for the bishop pair. So you have this conflict of ideas, which usually provides for some rich and exciting games. Rook e8 is played. All right. So by putting this pressure, right, indirectly on the e4 pawn, right, because if black, let's say black could move again, he could capture on d4 and then capture the e pawn, right? He has his bishop, knight, and rook all focused on e4. So black is trying to provoke white into playing a move like d5, right, and then he could obtain control over the c5 square. All right. So, of course, d5, not a good move at all in this position, right? And then black can hop around, knight bd7, take his time and eventually end up here. Okay. Another idea is this move c5 instead of rook e8. It's a more radical approach to get white to commit. So d5, knight bd7. This is just a sample line. Queen e2, for example, and rook e8, rook e1. And we can see that it's a tough battle here. g3, bishop c8. And this is the kind of game that black wants. Keep everything closed up as much as possible. And this limits the effectiveness of these bishops severely. As long as the position is closed, the two bishops aren't really going to be a major factor. Okay. All right. Back to the game. Rook e8. Okay. Rook e1 is played. Another option here is that you'll see sometimes the moves like f3 a little bit slower, and knight c6, attacking d4, 5, a4, h6, This is from an actual game that's played. Queen d2, e takes, c takes, and now knight b4, d5, and now black gets the bishop pair back. And this game headed for a draw. Okay, so you see the ideas of black here, just basically bogging the position down. Game continued, knight c6. All right, so again, attacking the d4 pawn, gaining time. And the idea is to go to g6 with that knight. Usually goes to e7 and then g6. Bishop b2. Knight a5. Now, this is just not a cheap attack on the c4 pawn, because as you can see, it's already protected. All right, so there's no problem protecting the pawn. The idea is to tie the white pieces down to having to defend it, though. All right, so basically by tying them to the responsibility of his defense, it's hard for white to activate them. All right, and it's hard to get the this bishop out also into the game. So queen e2 is played here. Now, if queen c2 is played, then bishop a6, again with more pressure on this pawn. And then you can see what it looks like for black. They actually carry out the idea. So for instance, rook a d1, queen d7, bishop f1, c5, g3, rook e7, bishop c6. This is actually a game between Vitiugov and Morozevich. d5, knight h7, f3, rook b8, rook e3, queen e8, rook de1, knight f6, queen d1, queen d7, h3, knight h5, king h2, and rook f8. And this game wound up being the draw. But again, you can see what it looks like when black has his way here, as far as just neutralizing the bishop pair in the position and exploiting the double pawns. So instead, in the game, queen e2 was played, queen d7, and then Korobov played knight f1 here. All right, so here he decides to sacrifice a pawn in this position. Maybe f3 was just better, and then you play this knight right here on d2 to f1 and then e3. Okay, so this is kind of a questionable move here, knight f1, but e takes d4, and now queen c2. If he takes back, c takes d4, then just bishop takes e4. All right, and this queen can't really, this queen being here is not too good, because after bishop takes e4, then just simply rook takes e4. So he moves the queen, and now knight c6, knight g3, d takes, bishop takes, and now it's black's turn to make a mistake here. Now, for the pawn sacrifice, white has, obtained some scope for his bishop. All right, so he has opened the position somewhat, but he's still down the pawn. Here, black makes a mistake by going back with the queen. But a better move is a natural move, knight e5. So, for instance, knight e5, bishop f1, right, saving the bishop pair, queen g4, f3, and then queen g6. All right, and white doesn't really have any compensation for the pawn. If he plays f4, then just simply knight d7, and then this pawn is gonna fall. You have 4 pieces attacking the pawn. And then here, if f3, Move like queen e6 is good. So this kind of loses time here and gives white a chance to kind of get some compensation for the pawn, so to speak. All right. And why do I say that he has compensations? Well, now the pawn center is mobile. And I always talk about in my other videos that when white or black for that matter has a big pawn center, it's not really the size of the pawn center that matters. It's the features of the pawn center. It's the mobility of the pawn center. If that pawn center is fixed and they're mobile, then it just becomes a big liability and target. Look at it this way. Let's say you have a business, okay, or a building rather. Let's say you have a piece of property, right? If you rent that property out, right, and you have businesses operating out of that property and making money, okay, then that property is an asset. It's fantastic because you have rent coming to you and revenue coming to your establishment. All right, but let's say that you own the property, but the building is abandoned and dilapidated, and the windows are busted, etc. Right? You have homeless people living in the building. Right? It's just a liability. Right? You're paying taxes, property taxes on the building, right? There's safety issues, right? Liability, somebody comes in there, some kids go in there and play around and get hurt, right? There's liability issues, all right? So you have the property, but it's not bringing you any revenue. In fact, it's a burden because you still have to take care of it, right? You still have to, deal with the red tape, as far as the legal part of it, etc. So it's the same way with the having a big pawn center, right? Everybody, wants to have the big pawn center, right? The four pawns in the center, right? You have the four pawns attacking King's Indian, four pawns attacking Alakon's defense, right? Everybody wants the big pawn center, right? But the pawn center is only good if it's mobile, all right? Once it's fixed, it becomes a liability, right? Because then it's a fixed target. The opponent can start maneuvering his pieces to attack and break down that center. Here, in this case, the center that white has is mobile, so it's very dangerous. Okay, this is like a useful asset, right? It's dangerous, and if black doesn't take care, the pawns are gonna push white's pieces. Excuse me, the pawns are gonna push black's pieces off the board. All right, and then in their expanse, it's also gonna open the scope for the two bishops in position. Let's see what happened. Knight d7. Okay, g6 is possible, right? Because it keeps the knight off f5, but look at the downside. It weakens the dark squares, and guess what? Black has no dark square bishop, right? To mitigate that. So knight d7 is played. Rook a d1. Again, this is a good idea here, right? Knight f5, just attacking this right here, and then f6, followed by rook e3. That's a good idea. But you can already see just in a few moves, all of a sudden, it's like the opportunities just open up for white just in a few moves. Remember the other games I was showing you whereby black kind of kept the position like just locked up and murky, and the bishops were just stuck on the back rank. Now contrast that to this. So back to the game. Rook a d1, knight e7 was played, and now knight h5. Good defense from Vitiugov, g6, because f6 would be disastrous because e5 would be played anyway. You could see the attack right here. F takes e5, bishop takes h7 check, king h8, and just f takes e5. And again, you see the bishops being glorified in the position. So knight h5, g6, knight f6, knight takes f6, bishop takes f6. Okay, so black has been forced to weaken the dark squares in the position. Okay, and this is just bad right here. right? Having this dark square bishop with no uh, opposition. Okay, Queen D7, and now F5. Again, the mobility of the pawns in the center is very important. So now this is, the troops are coming. Another idea that a lot of beginning players would do, right? But it's a good idea in this instance. Is just bring the bishop back to A1 with the idea of putting the queen in front to threaten mate. Again, very strong continuation. But back to the game, F5 was played, H6, Rook F1, Queen to C6 happened, Bishop D4. Okay, um, Bishop D4 is a good move, but Queen B2 is probably stronger here. G5, H4. Why not? King F8. The idea is G takes H4. Most of you probably can see what what would happen. Uh, with the king side getting ripped open like that. King H7, Rook F4. Again, brutality. Coming. Rook takes H4, and then all kind of pressure on H6. So King F8. H takes G5. H takes G5. Queen D2. Don't worry, the end is near. Bishop takes F6. Queen C5 check. Rook comes up. King F7. Bishop takes D5, and you can see Black's position just falling apart. King F8 and Bishop F6, and Vitiugov resigned. So you can see how things worked out at the end. The two bishops did happen to triumph in this position. Um, so that's it for today's game between Anton Korobov and Nikita Vitiugov. I hope you liked that game, and I hope you learned something about the little bit about the basic idea and premise in the Nimzo Indian. Where you had the two bishops versus the pawn. The imbalance of the two bishops versus the pawn, double pawns on the C file. Some games where black is able to to exploit that, and sometimes it doesn't work out. In this game, it was the triumph of the two bishops. So I hope you enjoyed that. Comments are welcome. Please subscribe and all that good stuff. Check my links below. There's always like DVDs related to the specific opening that we discussed in the game. So down below will be a donation link, and then also there'll be like DVDs and or books relating to the Nimzo Indian